The guitar tones on Let It Be, Get Back, and the Beatles' famous Rooftop concert have been talked about for decades, with loads of theories about how these were created. Now, I've discovered what might be a major missing piece of that puzzle. In a nutshell, Fender were making a very specific power amp modification to their silver-faced Fender Twins in the late 60s. It was part of Fender's attempt to rein in the Twins' output and reliability issues and reduce costly warranty repairs. Now, those Rooftop amps weren't your classic black-faced Twins. They were actually early silver-faced Twins with what turned out to be a pretty unpopular hybrid bias modification, a change that Fender actually abandoned pretty quickly in following silver-faced revisions. And that so-called bad mod is exactly why those amps sounded compressed, chewy, gritty, and even a little bit fuzzy at times. Definitely not your average Fender Twin sound. I'm going to explain exactly what this mod was and how it affects the feel and sound of your amp, and then I'm going to show you how you can apply the same idea to loads of different amplifiers. In my case today, I'm going to be installing it inside my Fender Hot Rod Deluxe IV. I've also got a bunch of schematics and research notes available over on my website. You just need a free account. Links down in the description if you want to grab those. Now, this isn't a complicated mod, and it's definitely not a Beatles only mod. The whole idea behind this is to show you can apply the same idea to loads of different amplifiers, not just vintage Fender amps. So first, I'm going to show you that circuit change, then I'm going to show you how I installed it inside my Fender Hot Rod Deluxe, and then we'll do some quick sound samples later on, just so you can hear the difference for yourself. Okay, let's check out the schematic of this amp. Now, if you do like these sort of videos, please hit that like button. It just lets me know you'd like me to make more of this sort of stuff. I really love making these types of videos, by the way. Now, the amps that the Beatles were using were the Fender Twin Reverb AC 568s. Now, here is a schematic. Now, I'm going to have this one available for you guys, and you can see that there is some stuff going on in this power stage here. Now, this schematic is a little unclear, but I do have the AB 568, which is virtually identical. It's really easy to read what's going on here. So you can see off the cathodes of all these power tubes is a 150 ohm resistor on both sides, and the cathodes are tied together with a 5UF 25 volt capacitor. Now, there's a few other changes. If you look down here, the bias circuit is different. There's like a balance pot that it goes to, and there's these 68Ks that go here. Now, also the plate resistors here on the phase inverter aren't your usual values, 47K. It sort of lowers the output of that phase inverter. And we've also got some caps here, some 2000 picofarad capacitors here on the grids of these power tubes. That was just to help with things like oscillation and stuff like that. The thing that I'm most interested in is these cathode resistors here and that capacitor tying those two cathodes together. And that's because I'm not wanting to clone these Beatles amps. I just want to borrow that behavior that they exhibited and show how you can use the same mod for lots of different amplifiers. Now, this change here adds a small amount of cathode feedback to the power tubes, which means as the amps get louder, it naturally starts to compress instead of staying stiff. So if you've ever played a Fender Twin before, you'll notice that when you dig in, those notes jump out, basically scaring the crap out of everyone in the front 5 rows. With this mod installed, it will compress those notes so nothing sort of jumps out the same. It sort of compresses, becomes a little bit dirtier. So you'll notice in the next silver-faced Twin revision, the AA769, they removed that. So those cathode resistors are gone, and it's because it just universally was not liked. When you're buying a Fender Twin, you want it to sound like a Fender Twin. Not that it sounded bad, it just didn't sound like a Fender Twin, right? So this is what I've got to do here. Here's my power stage here. Now, I am going to be cutting that trace right there, and I'm going to be replacing that diode and that resistor with a 150 ohm resistor, so 150 ohm, 150 ohm, and then I'm going to add a capacitor in here. Sorry, I'm using the smallest pencil in history. I don't know why I couldn't find a bigger freaking pencil, but anyway, with a 5UF 25 volt capacitor. And that's it. That is the mod. And I want to see how that changes the sound, so I'm pretty excited about this one. Right, so here is the mod installed on my amp. There's quite a bit of space around here, but honestly, if I was going to do this and have it permanently in there, because it does feel really good, you'd want to use something a bit chunkier resistor-wise, like some of these 25 watt ones. I definitely wouldn't go for 7 watt resistors, and definitely a 50 watt capacitor. I've used 2 back-to-back 25s to get me the right value and voltage rating, but that's just so I can show you this mod with stuff I've got on hand here in the workshop. If I was going to leave this in permanently, I'd definitely be going for these big suckers. But pretty much once you've got the mod installed, I just had to cut a couple of traces in here and install those resistors into that position. It was actually quite nice and tidy really. Because this adds a bit of cathode feedback, you want to bias a little bit cooler. So once this mod is in, stop thinking about watts and percentages and stuff like that. I just look at the idle current. So low to mid 20 milliamps per tube is exactly where this mod sort of wants to live. Fender bias traditionally really cold anyway, but it's just a bit safer that way. So this amp was biased bang on correctly before, and as soon as I put this mod in, it dropped it pretty much perfectly to 26 milliamps per tube. So if it's biased correctly before, you're good to go. So that is pretty much it. It's very simple, easy to install. First, we're going to do the amp stock, and then I'm going to show you with that mod. So I've kept all the settings exactly the same. I'm running it through that DIY attenuator project that we did recently, that awesome sounding sort of universal aux clone. So anyway, here is that stock sound. So definitely a massive difference. There's so much more compressed feeling. You can definitely hear that early saturation coming in that power stage. So it is quite a different amp now from what it was before. Usually these Deluxes are known for having loads of headroom, and you know, you've got that sort of massive dynamic range where you hit a note and those notes just jump and fly out, where now you can definitely feel them getting compressed down, which is actually quite a cool feeling, you know. So what is this mod actually doing? Well, it adds natural power amp compression, so louder notes compress instead of just getting louder, which thickens up the overall tone. It pushes the power stage into saturation earlier, so you get subtle musical clipping on harder hits, not preamp distortion. It introduces real power tube clipping, especially on those louder transient notes, which gives that juicier, more dynamic type of overdrive. It warms up the amp's overall response, so low mids feel fuller and the top end is slightly smoother. And it reduces extreme dynamics, so the amp feels more controlled and less stiff under the fingers. Now this is just different, not better or worse. It really just depends on what you prefer as a player. Now remember, I've got a bunch of schematics and my research over on my website. You just have to grab a free account and you can download that all for free. The links are down in the description. Now if you do try this mod out, please let me know how it went for you down in the comments, and also what amp you used it on, because I'd love to know how it works in with different designs. Anyway guys, have a great week and we'll catch you in the next video.